Jessica Bishop.
And you're listening to Through Dangers Untold, a monthly art podcast about traversing the precarious gap between art school and a professional, sustainable art career. And what are we working on this week?
So I am finishing up a new painting this week, as well as trying to get back into the swing of things after the long holidays. Getting back to work on my game, Bear Who Paints. What about you?
I'm doing a lot of the same, for sure. I took a long holiday as well, and am definitely trying to get back into my Quaint Spirits project to finish that up. And also just kind of look at my goals for the year and start planning what I want to do. So, mostly that.
Yeah, it's always tough at the start of the year
It is. It's
to
a
get
big,
going again.
right? Big headset change. And I know we're kind of stalling because we don't really want to talk about this, but today we're talking about money, which is always hard after the holidays.
It is, because you always want to buy everyone everything.
Yeah. So, money. Do you want to start it
Yeah,
off, Jess? Do you want me to?
I can start. So basically, the whole time you're in college, you're worried about how you're going to make money to make back that big investment that you put into college.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the hardest thing to realize, depending on what sort of path you've chosen in the art world, is that you're not going to make money right away.
Mm-hmm.
And how you're going to supplement yourself and what sacrifices you're going to have uh, to make life happen
Yep.
and not be homeless.
Yep. Very important. Yeah.
I made plenty of sacrifices. Lots of things, such as not being able to get my own place right away, taking jobs that weren't art related, like could maybe be towards a similar path, but I wasn't making art.
Mm-hmm.
Contract positions, just anything that like could kind of get me started, because I think one of the most important things, especially if you do want a full-time job in the art field at some point, is you don't want gaps in your resume.
Yep.
So even like you just need something to prove that you are doing something. So even if you have just gone fully freelance or you're just working on a project, you want to be able to say, this is what I was doing during this gap.
Yep.
It's something to keep in mind.
Yep, that's really true. And that's true for both just regular employment and for art as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's really interesting that we kind of get this perception that it's all going to happen so fast after school, and once you get into it and start to get into the reality of it, you kind of start to understand that it just takes time. It takes time to build.
It does. And I feel like you get warned about that, but you kind of brush it off.
That's probably
Like
true.
I did.
I probably did the same, even though I should know better.
I think I was kind of cocky about it, and I mean I wasn't doing bad. I mean, because I was leaning towards games, and I had that interview um, before I graduated. You graduated after me,
Mm-hmm.
so I had it before I graduated, and then within a few months I went and started doing that. But of course, that was just a contract. So I did it for a month, and then I stopped for a while, and then they called me back for another few weeks. But in the middle, I tried like a hodgepodge of things. Um, like I was doing some retail. I did banquet serving for like a hot minute.
Oh, wow.
That that's not that's really hard,
I bet.
and that was not my cup of tea.
It's good to know.
So I think it's important to be open to different types of things. I mean, the great thing about contracts is I could switch around my jobs for a while,
Hmm.
um, and try different things. The thing that's really cool about if you want to be a server is you can have odd hours
Hmm.
and odd days that you work if that's something that appeals to you. And you're often not working like 40 hours. You're not working a 9 to 5 with that. So there are different things you can do that give you more time to work on your art while still trying to put food on the table.
Right. Yeah, and even if you do have to get a full, like, 40-hour a week job, um, it is still possible to do. I mean, for a long time before I went back to school, I worked full time in accounting, reception, admin assistant type jobs, and um, and then I would do all my stuff on evenings, on weekends, and I still learned a lot. I still painted a lot. I still uh, kind of self taught myself a lot of things, found resources, and kept working on it, um, just by finding ways that I could squeeze it in during lunch breaks, during on the train, just whenever I could, and that's hard and exhausting.
That's draining.
It's really draining, because you don't have any downtime, and it's hard to sustain, but it's also doable. So I feel like I want to say that I know a lot of people who are in this situation right now, and it's really a struggle and it's really hard, and I totally sympathize with that. But I also know that it's like you have to see if you can find that time to squeeze it in, to just find those that 30 minutes, find that hour, just find that time that you can steal for yourself, to just do that for yourself, for your sanity and for your art. So it's
Yeah,
hard.
that's a really good point.
It's
I
hard.
mean, I I had a full-time job where I was doing um, art assets and UI assets
Hmm.
for a company that we made entertainment type things. Um, and I didn't want to make art when I went home. Like I would do it when I could, and I would do it on weekends,
Hmm.
but I would feel so frustrated and drained by my position at work and frustrations with it
Hmm.
that it was really hard. So eventually I made the decision to quit. Um, and it was one of my better decisions, I think, because I didn't feel like I was growing
Hmm.
at that company as much as I would have been growing on my own, which was true. And I think that's another kind of thing, like learning about yourself and knowing what's going to make you a more productive person and get you towards your goal faster.
Right.
Ideally, you can have a full time job and still do it, but not everyone's like that. And I'll be the first to admit I'm really bad at that.
Yep. Yep. I hear you. I got to a point too, for sure, where that was the case for me as well, where I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. On top of that, uh, um, business jobs are just as scarce as art jobs. They're just as unstable, and the world will tell you that that's not true, but it is actually true. It's just as
Did you
easy.
say business jobs?
Business jobs, yeah, like,
Yeah.
even if you think you're getting that safe, stable, full-time 40-hour a week job, every place that I worked at got sold. Every place that I worked at got, departments got let go. It's just, and there's no reasoning, there's no rhyme to it, there's no reasoning to it. It just happens. And I think after going through so many rounds of that, I was just like, okay, well, this is about as risky as art. I might as well risk for art instead of just sitting here waiting to be fired because somebody decided to get rid of a department. So,
Exactly, it's true. I mean, people that go into games, they think that they're going to have a full-time job, a 9 to 5, but it's too expensive for a lot of companies to pay for that many full-time employees.
mm-hmm.
So they contract you and then you're fired as soon as the project ends. I mean, animation does that too.
Right,
Um, like everyone does it. And it's just the kind of economy that we're dealing with at this point.
right,
And we're not going to have a stable job where you get a job when you're 25 and then you can work there for 30 years.
right.
You should expect to, if you are going for the non-freelance route, to have a new job every 2 years.
Yep, yep.
That's about average at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a big myth. I'm really glad you brought that up because I hear that a lot from people who are trying to get into art or who are thinking about a career in art, and they think that it's more like they think that like what you're talking about, like game jobs and publishing jobs and kind of the more old school stable jobs are actually stable. And yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because
No,
it's
nothing's stable.
important. And that's scary. That's terrifying. It's so scary. But I think it brings up the importance of diversifying.
Yeah.
Like, don't put all. This week I saw people talking about how they're worried about making money at conventions. And I think that's the same thing. Like, don't put
You
all your
can't
money.
survive off convention.
Yeah, don't put all your money in conventions. Don't put all your money in doing video game art. Don't put all your money
There's
in. You just.
there's
have to.
no way.
Yeah. Yeah, you just
The
can't.
people that are most successful at conventions do so many other things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, artists at this point, some of my favorite artists, they're doing books, they're doing concept art,
Mm-hmm.
they're doing inventions, they're doing comic art, they have their hands in all these piles
Yep.
because that's the only way to keep consistently getting work.
Right. Not only that, but
So,
they'll have like an online shop. They have a Patreon. They have a streaming. They're
yes,
streaming. They're podcasting. Yeah.
they're doing everything to expose themselves,
Yes.
and they're not specializing themselves.
Right.
Some people can get away with that, but it takes a really long time to get to that point.
Right.
It's
Right.
just not something you can do right away.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in something like, I mean, I know at our school, there's still a lot of kids that really want to do concept art.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I know that our school doesn't prepare them for the reality of that because I hate to say it, but most of it is outsourced to China.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I mean, companies will get the best people they can, especially since concept artists are very, very rarely hired in a full-time benefits position
Right.
because you don't need a concept artist for that long. You
Right.
take the concept, you visualize it, you put it together, and then they don't need you anymore.
Right.
Like, great example, Giger on the Alien franchise. He
Mm-hmm.
was hired at the beginning of Alien. They didn't hire him back for the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
They already had his concepts.
Right.
What else did they need from him?
Right.
So it's just one of those things that I think people don't realize. So you have to make yourself more available than that. Like, you can't just be a concept artist. Maybe you need to be an asset artist. Maybe you also need to be able to do 3D modeling.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since even just regular illustration, they're having a lot of, like, wanting a lot of 3D illustrations at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to do stuff like medical illustration or textbooks, like you need to know how to do vectors.
That makes sense. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That makes total sense. Interesting.
Yeah, and I mean vectors are great. They get a bad rap, students, but like learn how to do vectors.
Mm-hmm.
It's once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard and it's comes in handy. That
Right.
it's not pixels. It's better.
Right.
You don't have to worry about the size. So basically, diversify your skills. You can still stick within the same, like you can stick with the same style. You can stick with what you're comfortable with, but you can have different assets at your sleeve.
Yep.
Like, like not only can I do this, but I can also help this because companies want to hire the least amount of people possible to get the job done.
Right.
So if you could do several jobs, you're a much better asset to them.
Yep. Yep, that's true. I do want to say a caveat though that I think if this isn't something that you're comfortable with or not is not what you want to do or passionate about, then it's not worth it because that lack of passion, that lack of desire will show every time. You can see it all the time. I see it in myself. I've tried to do this. I see it in other artists. People can tell when you're just doing it for the money.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're just desperate and you're just trying to do this for the money and you don't really care about what you're doing, it just comes through. And the person that cares about it and the person that's really this is their thing and their passion and they've worked really hard at it and they've spent hours working on it, they're going to get the job. It's not going to be
Absolutely.
It's not going to be you if it's not what you love, you know? So we say
Right.
so diversifying can mean not only being like having a lot of skills and skill sets, but it can also be knowing what you're good at, knowing what you love, knowing what you're passionate about, and really, really building the crap out of it, like really getting great at it, and then knowing where to take that, knowing where to apply that, and seeing if you can apply it to a bunch of different markets or to a bunch of different places. So it doesn't have to be like learn 3D if you hate 3D. Like, don't do that.
Oh.
That would be a
Well, I mean,
waste.
yeah, I hate 3D.
So it's going to be a waste
So,
if you try to learn 3D.
well, that's why I split my major.
Yeah.
So like I know a little bit about it and if I sat down I could probably do some more
Mm-hmm.
and do but like one of those things though is like I don't want a 3D model, but I'm willing to make textures for 3D models because that's still painting.
Yeah.
So there's always kind of workarounds, there's always kind of things you can do. But yeah, I totally agree. Don't waste your time on something that makes you miserable.
Right.
It's not worth it.
It's not. And you can tell. You can
That's
tell.
like that's like wanting to be an artist and then being a dentist,
Exactly. Exactly. Don't do that.
unless you're obsessed with teeth.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you love teeth,
But
then do that.
it's better. I mean, this is such a cliche, but this is what everyone says, and it's kind of true. But if you just do what you love, eventually you're gonna figure it out.
Yes.
You're gonna make money somehow. You're gonna make it work if you really care about what you're doing, even if that's getting a stupid job at a spa like I did for
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. Like
Yep.
you're going to do what you can to let yourself have that career.
Right. Right, because if you love the thing you're working on, then that gets you through the hard times. It gets you through the tiredness, not all the time, but when you're home from that job, if you love it and you're passionate about it, it's easier to get through.
Especially since if it's not making you angry, if
Yeah.
it's not giving you such emotions that really like debilitate you, as long as you're enjoying it and knowing that it's for the best, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, also, if you take a job that's like a full time job, if at all possible, try not to take the job where your boss is crazy or your coworkers are crazy and it takes all your energy and it makes you sad and cry every day. Because that, I've been there, man, and
Yeah,
that's hard to make art in that environment because that'll suck all the life out of everything. So I know it's not always possible and you just have to take the work you can get. But if you can, try try to at least find a place where they're not crazy. It will
I
help you.
agree. Or work somewhere that inspires your craft.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I've thought about doing this, going and getting a job at a museum, even if you're just freaking um, purchasing tickets for people.
Oh yeah.
Like, you're still surrounded by things that you like, and when you get off your shift, you can go and like hang out.
Mm-hmm.
You can go be inspired. You can try to, make yourself some connections, something like that, or go work at an art store.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get access to new materials.
Right. Right. Although I will say,
Something.
oh no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well,
No, no, I'm good.
I was gonna say working in corporate really inspired me a lot. I had lunch hours of like putting on my favorite music of like fuck corporate. Like my best like I hate this job, get out of this place kind of music, and I would just draw the crap out of that lunch hour because I was like, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to live this life that I want.
If that works for you, go for it.
Yeah, to everybody's different, so everybody has different
It's
motivators.
true. Exactly. And it might take, if you're just graduating college, it might take you a year to figure out what the best situation for you is with multiple jobs.
Oh yeah,
And that's okay.
yeah. Try a bunch of things for
I mean,
sure.
I changed so much within the 2.5 years I've been out of college. This will
Mhm.
be my third year.
Mhm.
So that's weird. But yeah.
No, that
And
happens though.
I'm glad. I changed for the better. When I'm saying I changed, I did change, but I'm mostly talking about my art changed.
Mhm.
And I figured so much out doing the different jobs, what I like, what I don't like, and just trying to figure out what's going to make it work for me. And I feel like my art has benefited from it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's always the most important. I, I mean, as an artist, I feel like growing and your art getting better is one of the most important things in our personal lives.
Yep.
Because if you feel stagnant, what's the point?
Right.
But yeah, money.
Indeed, money. So, Jess, you've talked about how you've made the choice to do art full time, and I have made that choice as well. I'd like to hear what your experience is like with that.
Um, I like it, of course. It's just I've made a lot of sacrifices for that. Um, I don't have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't live on my own right now. I should be moving soon, but I'm still going to be heavily dependent on my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very lucky and reliant for all the supports that I have from friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a tough pill to swallow when you can't sustain yourself completely,
Yeah.
but it's a sacrifice that I've made for something that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm privileged enough to be in a position where that's possible. Because not everyone has that option of relying on family.
Right.
And so I'm very grateful for it. But otherwise, I I would probably be working somewhere I hated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people who can't do 9 to 5. I can't handle it. I've tried it. I don't want to do it ever again. I don't like office environments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's just one of those things. Like, if you have the option to stay at home and save your money and do what you can do, it's not that bad. It sucks, but if it makes a difference in your craft, do it. If that's not an option, then you have to get a full-time job and keep with it until you're having enough freelance work that you can stop.
Right.
And I know people on both sides of that coin.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's a lot of at least for me, there's a lot of guilt associated with it. But at the same time, I'm like, my goal is to not be in this situation.
Yes.
I don't want to stay in this situation.
Right.
So my goal is that I will be making money, whether it's from my paintings or my game, or if it comes down to me getting another part-time job or a job doing, game art. It's one of those things also where I've had to accept that I am not going to be in a super stable position for a while.
Right.
Which is very draining, but it's fine. It's like you do what you do to make it work, because honestly, I think if I wasn't in some precarious situations, I would be bored.
Yeah, I get that.
And I don't want to be bored.
Yeah, that's true.
I like I like being able to travel.
Mm-hmm.
Um I like that freedom. I like the freedom to not have to call in sick days.
Right.
I like the freedom to get up and walk my dog.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like the freedom to work late
Mm-hmm.
and not have to be confined by specific hours. But I have to say, I think maybe one of the downsides of working from home and working for yourself is your brain never shuts off from work.
Right.
So, I'll be trying to relax, but I'll still be thinking about what other things I should be doing because I don't have that cutoff time.
Right.
I'm always thinking about it because I work in the same place that I relax.
Yeah, that makes it hard.
It's and there's definitely a lot of guilt when you're not doing work because you're like, I should be working.
Right.
But it's also one of those things where you have to set up boundaries for yourself, which you're really good at doing.
Yep, I have to, because otherwise, I have that same problem. I just will think about it always. And I'm lucky enough to have an apartment where I can do that. I have my own studio space. I can close the door, I have separate space so that this is my designated office space. And I have a set schedule, set time I stop. And because I'm so rigorous with that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't
I
completely
imagine.
shut it off. It doesn't completely shut it off when I have a big deadline or when I have a convention coming up or something that makes me nervous or stressed. I do still struggle with that. But it has helped me by setting those boundaries. And also getting dressed and putting on clothes and treating it like a job.
Oh, that's the worst.
No, not everybody needs to do that, but for me, I need that to separate my life and my work time.
I should do that. but I really like my sweatpants.
Then wear your sweatpants.
I do. I do, Sonic.
You should.
The only part the hard part it gets for me is when I'm like I haven't left the house in a week.
Yeah.
That's when I start to wait, maybe I should put on clothes, but then I don't want to. Like I don't want to go out because I don't want to put on clothes.
That makes sense.
But also it takes me a while to get stir crazy.
Yeah.
But it is still important, even if you don't feel like it when you're working from home, to get up. You have to get up and walk around. That's my advice of the day. Get up from your desk and please walk around
Yep.
and eat a balanced diet. Okay.
That's all good advice.
It's one of those things where it's even if you're poor and can only eat ramen, throw some vegetables in it.
Yep.
Just try to get a little something. You'll feel better.
It will help. For sure. And that is kind of the con of I mean, I guess it just depends on your personality, you know? Like, some people need more social time. So if you have an office or you have a game design job where you're going into a studio, you talk to people and you have coworkers. And everybody has different levels of social time that they need.
Needs. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can kind of assess how to get that. It's harder when you're broke because a lot of people use coffee shops that way to go and get that time to be with people, and I like that a lot.
Or bars.
Or bars, for sure.
Which is more expensive.
It is more expensive. Coffee is cheaper. So, yeah, finding ways to budget that in can be hard. But there's also things, too, like I go on a morning walk. So that's free. You know, I can go to the park. I can look at the dogs and pet the dogs and talk to people in the neighborhood. And that helps. When I can't afford to go to the coffee shop, I can do that to get that other people time in.
Exactly. Or one of my favorite things, if you live near like a park or anything like a state park or a national park, and you can just go in for free. You can take reference photos. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Get a friend and go for a walk, and you don't have to pay anything, and you get a bunch of reference photos.
Yep.
It's a refresher.
Yep. It's a good thing to do. And there's also libraries. There's libraries, and if you live in the city, it's nice because there's a lot of free programs. So you can hear free music. You can go get free days at the museum. So there's different things you can do to kind of get yourself out for very little money. And
exactly. Exactly.
That helps. But I agree with you, Jess. I think there is that guilt sometimes associated, well, a lot of times associated with having to rely on someone while you start your career. You know, there's that kind of stupid pop culture thing of the guy who plays guitar and lives on your couch. And I'm always afraid that I'm that person, except I'm the artist version of that.
I'm that person.
Because my husband is currently supporting both of us with his full-time job. And he also makes movies, so he does his work on the evenings and weekends, and he gets it done. And that's hard. But man, I appreciate him so much. And we made this decision together. We talked about it together, and I think that's really important. That whoever, like your parent, if you're living with your parents or if you're living with friends, I mean, I think as long as you keep communicating about what your plans are and what your goals are,
yes,
you can kind of make that decision together.
Exactly.
Which I think is really important. It's kind of better than saying, hey, I'm just doing this now.
You have to communicate. I mean, like, think of, like, Sonnett, you and I know of, like, tons of artists who rely on their partners.
Yep.
It's super common and no one talks about it
Yep.
because it's kind of embarrassing sometimes.
Yeah,
So, but it's just how it is.
it is. It is. And that's with any job. We live, like we were talking about this economy now, we live in an economy where lots of people have multiple jobs, both partners have jobs. Um, so it's kind of weird. I see this idea hanging around in art circles, and especially in the fantasy art community, that you're supposed to just make all the money like you're in some 1950s household. And I'm like, no, that isn't
Well,
how it works anymore.
that's how it feels sometimes being an artist. Like I feel like that sometimes, where
Because
it's
we
like,
rely on
oh
our
no.
partners.
I was
Is
like,
that
oh
why?
no, I'm a housewife.
I think that's
I gotta
different
get the
though.
Swiffer out.
I know, I gotta go bake some bread, right?
Tupperware parties.
Right? Oh boy.
Not gonna lie, I love Tupperware.
Oh, well, there you go.
Leftovers
Oh, leftovers
are
are
a
great.
savior.
They
They're a
are.
savior.
They are for real. Make a lot of stuff in a crock pot. That will also save you.
Yep.
You can eat it for days.
Or, you make too much at dinner, save it, what's left, and make something else out of it
Oh
for
yeah,
lunch.
for sure.
There's so many options. But yeah, it
Side note.
food's been a hot topic lately.
It has been. Yeah. So there's like that double-edged sword, isn't it? It's like one, most people have to rely on each other to get through life right now, um,
Uh-huh.
just to survive. And two, so that puts you kind of in this weird position because it's like, all right, so I need a job. But I think that leads to the other weirdness is that our culture doesn't feel like art is a job. It's so weird. But art
I
really
know,
is a
but like,
job.
where do you think your company logos come from? Like, where do you think your video games come from? Who do you think
Exactly.
designs book covers?
Right.
Like, who, like, this isn't art in the fine art sense, but who do you think designs your pencil holders?
Yeah.
Like, or, the UI on your computer, like, just all these little things that no one thinks about.
Yep.
um, the the textures on or the patterns on your blankets or drapes. Like I can see it everywhere, but
Yep.
other people take it for granted.
Yep.
Oh, my freaking Kleenex box.
Yeah.
Someone designed this pattern.
Right.
And my Kleenex box would be really boring without it.
That's right.
I appreciate it.
So I find when I'm feeling guilty about not earning enough money yet to meet the same level that my husband brings in, and I do end up feeling guilty and feel really responsible about it. I do find that I think a lot of that comes from that weird clash between how society views art, how I view art, um, and just kind of that whole old roles, responsibility kind of
The old
thing.
rules gets to me.
Yeah, it does me too, for sure.
It I think because it's one of those things where if I've had conversations with my partner about how we're going to divide up responsibilities
Mm-hmm.
um, when we move in together this year. And it's one of those things where he's going to have a job and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. But for me, I need to be able, until I'm making a financial contribution, to be able to contribute to the household, which in turn turns into me taking care of the dog and cleaning and doing finances
Mm-hmm.
and preparing meals or at least going grocery shopping and doing a lot of errands that are more of a um, old female role.
Right.
As a housewife, I don't like that word, and it's frustrating to me because um, at the same time we've stigmatized that role so much that I feel guilty being in that role.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, that's still a lot of work being
It
in that
is.
role.
It's so much work.
And people like to blow that aside, but I'm like, well, someone has to do it. Especially if you're not making a lot of money, you can't afford to just hire someone to do it.
Right.
So it's like, it's one of those things where you can't buy into, you can still have a role in your life, such as being the role of a housewife, without feeling like you're inferior.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah.
it's just it's one of those things again about communication,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't, even if you are picking up extra roles in the household, such as like cleaning, you
Mm-hmm.
can't feel like that makes your art not a job.
That's the important thing because let me tell you, being a housewife can be a full time job.
It is a full-time job.
Plus some. So you have
Especially
to.
like if you
Yeah.
have a kid, if you have a
Yeah.
dog or a cat,
Yeah.
and then like depending on how big your house is, and like
Yes.
if someone's at work all day, it's kind of hard for them to like keep up with their meals
Right.
and laundry and cleaning, and it's just there's a lot that goes into a household, and it's one of those things that you just don't think about.
Yes. So you
Because
have to be really careful because it's really easy, and I think still, even though things have changed, it's still really easy for women to just assume that role and not negotiate it with their partner, even though like I had to go through this with my husband in terms of saying like, okay, I'm working, and this is another reason why I have a really set schedule. This is the time I'm working. This is a full time job. I'm working 40 hours a week doing art. This is a full time job. And I think it's too easy to say, well, okay, I'll do the cleaning, I'll do the cooking, I'll do all that. But it's too easy to let that take place of the art. I've done it. It's
right,
it's
that's
just
something I'm concerned about.
yeah, you have to. He's still responsible. Your partner still needs to help. He still needs to help with the chores. Because even though it seems like you don't have a job and it seems like you're not contributing, that just isn't true. Um, because you're
Exactly.
because art is a job and you are working toward a career that will make money, and so I think it's really easy to that and discount the hours you put in art and call it not a job, even because you're not getting paid yet. But I think that's a mistake, and
It is.
it can easily lead to burnout and frustration, um, with chores. So
And
my
uh,
warning to you now. You'll probably need to negotiate this.
well, I don't cook.
So there you go. You'll do the cooking.
I'll buy the groceries and plan the meal, but
There you go.
I refuse. I don't like cooking.
Well, then that'll be
I'm
his
fine
thing.
cleaning. Yep. But I think it's another on the other side of this. I think it's important if you are an artist, man or woman, and you assume this role where you are staying at home and working on your art, and you maybe do pick up some of the extra surplus chores. I think it's also important not to have a stigma against yourself, let other people tear you down for that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think it's just sometimes we look so much down upon that without realizing how much work it is.
Yeah, that's really
And
true.
we shouldn't look down on people who do that. especially even if they're just like that's all they're doing.
Oh yeah.
There's It's important not to stigmatize other people's life choices because what works for them, and if that's how they're going to get successful in their art career, that's fine. Because look, like I can't like not everyone can afford a freaking Blue Apron,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
no. Yeah, no.
Like or, or going out to dinner or having a cleaning lady or like you and for I think for people in other industries, sometimes not all industries, of course, but like they don't even think about that because that's just they both go to work and they can have someone else do that or have afford a dog walker or a babysitter
Right.
or and it's okay to keep those responsibilities within the household.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure.
I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I struggle with very much
With that
is
stigma?
yeah, just kind of
Oh.
well, like I feel guilty on myself because I'm like, well, I should be out having a full-time job being this great, cool artist and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I'm like, I also really care about having a clean house
Mhm.
and not having to work a corporate job. So if I have to sacrifice not having really cool, awesome, pays a lot of money job for cleaning the house and doing my own art thing, that's fine.
Oh yeah.
And I think basically what I'm trying to say is that whatever works for you works for you.
Yeah, yeah. For sure.
And it's okay to not have the dream job right away.
Oh yeah. Oh
It's
yeah.
not going to be the dream right away. It's going to be a while.
Yeah.
Like my most favorite successful artists are 40 and over, and they've worked a long time to get to that point.
Mhm. Yeah. I think my fear is because I grew up so differently where it was expected that women were going to do all that work. Um
Right.
and I saw so many women give up their dreams for that
Right.
that I kind of have the opposite. I have huge respect for anyone who's a stay-at-home mom because I just totally respect that. It's not a path I wanted, but man, it's so much work. It's such hard work. Um,
And it's taken for granted,
it's super
especially I'm
taken
sure
for
where
granted.
you grew up.
It's the one place in America, probably maybe a couple other places, where being a housewife is super revered. It's
Oh,
expected.
that's true.
It's expected, and it's um, really revered. And like, if that is your choice and your passion and the thing that you love and you want to do, it's probably the best place for you to be because it will
Hmm.
encourage you and support you in that choice in a way I don't see out here. Um, but if
Yeah.
that's not your path and that's not your choice, and then it's really hard. so, so there's a balance.
Right.
And
I
honestly, more than anything, it's like just don't sacrifice your art for it. Like don't let
no.
that take over all your time
No,
because
of course not.
it can happen
Like
really
the
fast.
work comes first.
Yeah.
The like unless you have roaches in your house, like the cleaning can wait if you have something that takes higher priority.
Right.
Like you can't you can't think of yourself as less than
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
because you're not less than. And a lot of artists like to tell people that they're less than if they do stuff like that. Like because they have, really great, more corporate art jobs or bigger contracts with bigger companies. Um, but everyone is different and everyone has a different path.
Right.
And however you make money is your choice and how you do it and how you sustain yourself. And it'll work out. It's easy to get discouraged and it's easy to give up and say, I'm going to do something else.
Right.
I've thought it so many times. Like, I'm just going to do something else. I'll go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't know what else would make me happy.
Right.
So I think happiness, being happy will help with the money.
Right. Right, right. Because if you're at home doing your work and you're doing the thing that you love, it does become a reward in its own, in its own, instead of other things.
And this is such a hard topic because everyone has a different view and a different sensitivity to it.
Right.
And like, I know there's so many artists out there that just aren't as in a privileged position as you and I are to have support from loved ones.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, it's like, if this is what you care about, you're going to make it work. Even if, like you said, like you get a job and on every lunch break you have, every time your commute, you can sneak it. You can sneak in your art. You can keep practicing.
Right.
Find a local community that gets together. Do your best to find that and try to find other artists if you can't go to school.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're out of school and can't afford, do more classes or, go to expensive meetups or anything. Just find a community, even online communities, there are plenty.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That can help a lot. And it can help
There's
you.
ways to make it work.
Yeah, it can help you get through hard times and times when you're struggling. I guess that's the same thing. And find inspiration and find other resources that you may not have thought of. It can help a lot.
Right. You were talking earlier that sometimes when you're put in these harder situations, you have more ingenious points of view. Like you can make something with the challenge, you're able to find a new way of doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Is this last year I got in a kind of a rough place cuz this is the first year I've this last year I've worked full time as an artist, and there was a point in the summer where it was just like, man, I need to make money. What am I going to do? I started down that path I was talking about of looking at things to make money. I was making things that I wasn't as passionate as about, and kind of diverting my time to that. And I tried that out for a little bit, and I just got so discouraged and wasn't feeling inspired. And I was like, what am I doing? I had to step back. I had to step back and look at it and think, what am I doing? I just want to try this for the money. This is stupid. I was getting all bummed about not being able to go to conventions because I couldn't afford them. But I started to look around, and I started to look around at what other artists were doing, ways they were trying to create inventory for themselves without having to buy inventory, listening to some other artists who were talking about it. And realized, okay, well, print on demand gets such a bad rap, but a lot of people do it. A lot of people really start out in print on demand. I'm always surprised at the anime kids at anime conventions, because those kids in the artist alleys know more about selling sometimes than the adults. And they've started when they were like 16, and they're selling.
And that's why they know so much.
They do, and they have no money, right? But they do it anyway. And I'm like, how do they do it? Oh, they print on demand. They build up their inventory that way. They build up their audience that way. They're on social media. So I think you just have to get creative. Like anything, when you don't have the money resources, you just have to say, what do I have? What do I have right now? What am I able to do? How can I get my art out there? And sometimes I think when people do that, they stumble upon new platforms, they stumble upon new community events, they create community events, they start something that ends up being something that everybody else wants to jump onto, because they just weren't in that creative place of trying to find solutions to that problem. So it's not all bad. It's not all.
No, it's not.
It's not all terrible.
A lot of it's too.
There is hope.
There is. There's always hope.
Yeah, you just never know. So.
Yep.
So
Well.
we are getting close to the end of our hour here. We still have about 5 minutes. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with this?
Oh, I feel like we pretty much said everything. I mean, yeah, it's hard, but you have to make it work. And I wish that we had some better advice, but it's so generalized trying to talk to a whole bunch of people on an individual basis.
Mm-hmm.
It would definitely be easier to address questions. So if anyone has questions, let us know.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where I think the best thing I can say is to just stay positive, as hard as that may be, and do what you can to not give up your passion.
Yes.
Don't give up.
Seriously, don't. Let it be the thing that carries you through.
You've put in a huge investment if you went to college, like, and graduated. That's don't give it up. That was an investment you made in yourself because of something that you love to do. So don't forget that.
Right. And yeah, do the art because you have to. Do the art because it's your voice and what you need to say and what you want to bring into the world. Don't forget that.
Yes. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
Okay.
on that note, let's see. Okay, you've been listening to Through Dangers Untold, and our logo was created by Karen Hodo, and you can find her online at kmhododesigns.com. And Jess, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JRU Bishop, just my initials and my last name.
All right, and you can find me at sonnettshelline.com, and also just Sonnett Shelline at Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr. Feel free to check that out. And we're going to skip next month because it's on Valentine's Day. But we will be discussing community, which is perfect after this.
Yay!
In March, so March 14th. Please join us then. And thank you for listening, and see you next month. Or 2 months.
Good night.
Good night.